I'm Karen Eyre-White. I'm the Chief Executive of the Sports Ground Safety Authority. The Green Guide is the guide to safety at sports grounds, and it gives guidance on how to set a safe capacity of a sports ground, and so it advises on how to keep people safe while they're in a venue. We've seen huge improvements in safety over the last 3 decades since the Hillsborough disaster, and the Green Guide has had several different editions, and what we aim to do is to make sure that we are responding to changes in the sector and giving advice and guidance that supports sports grounds in keeping people safe. So some of the themes that you'll see in the new edition are around advancements in technology, smart stadia, crowd modelling, some of the risks around terrorism and security, which we think need to be integrated into the guide, and also a focus on some of the external factors around a venue and how those need to be managed in an integrated way. The Green Guide talks about what we call P factors and S factors. So P factors is about the physical condition of the stadia, and that in some ways is easier if you've got a new ground, but it's also about maintenance arrangements and how you keep a stadium safe from a physical perspective. And the S factors are about safety management, so that's really for anybody. It doesn't matter whether it's a new ground or not. You can look at that guidance and you can integrate that into your safety planning. Safety has moved on a huge amount in the last 3 decades, and we've been very fortunate in the UK not to have any major incidents since the Hillsborough disaster. But it means that the real risk today is about complacency and about people thinking, well, it's not happened for 28 years, so it can't happen now. And actually our message is that you have to continue investing in safety to make sure that it's on the board agenda and that people at the very top of the business understand that it's a business critical activity. It's very, very sad and very much in our minds at the moment, given the recent events, that crowded places have been a target. Sports grounds are no exception to that, and have been targets of the Stade de France, for example, and other stadia attacks. So it's absolutely critical that sports grounds are understanding this risk, putting in place plans to deal with it, working with the police, working with counter-terrorism experts, and thinking about the range of factors that they need to build into their planning in order to prepare themselves to try and prevent an incident, but also what they would do and what the contingency plans are if an incident does happen. Venues should already have crowd management plans, but what they'll want to do in the light of recent incidents is to look at them and to make sure that they aren't making them exposed to any particular risks. So build up a people, queues. One of the biggest risk areas actually is a queue to a security check, because of course that is quite a soft target. It's not been target hardened. So thinking about how you can get people to come to your ground early, how you can disperse some of those crowds, on egress, how you can stop those build-ups in order to minimise the risk, as well as things that you can do in terms of the physical environment and working with counter-terrorism advisors around the type of glass that you have in stadia and some of the hostile vehicle mitigation. There's a whole range of things that you can do in advance. There's a whole range of things that you need to build into your plans and have contingency plans for. Segregation is, in football, part of managing the crowd. It's part of controlling those risks around crowd disorder, particularly if you've got a particularly high-profile game or fans that feel particularly strongly against the other team. So I think segregation arrangements are part of doing all that planning around crowd movement. I think you have to be clear how you manage the crowds in that context. So you need to know where people are going in the venue, how those crowds will flow out, given that you are constraining where some people can go. But I think that is a pretty well-established practice in the UK, and it's traditionally very well managed. So in the UK, after Hillsborough, the government introduced the all-seater policy. It says that in the top 2 tiers of English and Welsh football, you have to have all-seated grounds. We do licence standing in the lower league, so Leagues 1 and 2 can have standing accommodation, and we licence that as an authority. There are increased challenges with standing when you get into very big stadia, high-profile matches, and there are challenges around movement of crowds that you don't get in a seated deck. The government has been quite clear that at present it's not persuaded about the case to change that policy, but that it will look very closely at the installation that's happened in Celtic this season, and we spent quite a lot of time there to understand how that's working. But ultimately it's a ministerial government policy. I think that given the success of the policy, along with investments in safety over the last 3 decades in really changing the feel and the safety of our stadia, any change to that policy needs to be really carefully considered. But what we want is there to be a well-informed debate. Things like the installation at Celtic are really helpful because they give us evidence that we can look at in order to understand what the safety implications are. We We have a real challenge around persistent standing. Thousands of people stand every week. It is an incredibly difficult situation to manage when you've got thousands of people. It's very difficult for stewards to get people to sit down. We've worked with local authorities, with the football authorities and with others to try, and we've put guidance out a couple of years ago around how do you manage this situation, and really there's a role for everyone in trying to manage it. But you're right, there is, it is a really challenging thing to do, and it does link into those discussions about standing.